Welcome to the Savoy Originals. I'm Alex Zane, and this week I am joined by a model who has forged a very unique path through the industry, gracing the covers of pretty much every fashion publication of note and being the go-to girl for the biggest brands in the world, all the while championing body positivity. Today we talk about everything from parenting her own parents to turning teen detective as we look at the moments that helped her blaze a trail in the fashion world.
That was the other deciding factor for me leaving school was I thought, right, well, if I can make even one woman feel good about having a real woman's body as opposed to this emaciated look that everyone is really championing, if I can just change one person's part of someone's life, then that would have made my job worth it. Okay, I'm up for that.
Yes, my guest is, of course, the brilliant Daisy Lowe. And that's all on this episode of the Savoy Originals. Now, before we dive in, let's raise a glass to Laurent-Perrier, our sponsor, for adding a bit of magic to this episode. We are sipping on Laurent-Perrier Heritage, but today I want to share another piece of the story. Back in 1987, Laurent-Perrier's then head of house, Bernard de Nonancourt, did something rather beautiful. For his daughter Alexandra's wedding, he crafted a unique champagne just for her. This was a cuvée that still sets the standard for vintage rosé champagne today. So here's to that legacy of family and celebration. Cheers! Daisy Lowe, wonderful to have you here. Cheers. Here's to you.
And to you.
True original. Okay.
Oh, that's the good stuff.
Right? Only the good stuff here. So I want to start today by going back to the beginning, because growing up surrounded by creative people in the public eye before obviously going on yourself to be a trailblazer in the modelling world and helping shape the conversation about body positivity. As we sit here about to celebrate all of that, do you think there's a quality that you learnt as a child that has shaped the way you approach your work even today?
Wow, that's a really brilliant question. I think that the way that I approach my work has been ingrained in me by my mother 100%. She's always been such a grafter. Because my mum had me so young as well that she always treated me like I was more like one of her mates. She would drag me around every weekend around Portobello Market from when I was a toddler and put me in kind of vintage white lace dresses and Doc Martens, and that was what I wore as a 2-year-old.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm led to believe that you weren't entirely in love with some of the vintage outfits that your mum was putting you in. Did that just come from the idea that when you are a child, the desire is to kind of fit in with your peers as opposed to stand out?
Yeah, exactly. So I think my mum was always a real black sheep and always went against the grain. She's always had impeccable taste. But I just wanted to wear T-shirts and jeans. And actually, we used to fight over the fact that I'd wanted to wear things like my Spice Girls T-shirt and just like Gap flares. And she was like, no, I want you in pretty lace tea dresses. And so I did want to fit in. But then as I grew up, in my teenage years, I realised how brilliant that individuality really is. But I also think that was the only way that I could rebel against my mum was by trying to be ordinary,
So in reality, you quite liked the Doc Martens and the lace dresses.
Yeah.
It was just like, I'm not being told what to
exactly.
do.
It was just that rebellious nature that is just clearly so ingrained in me.
I mean, we touched on the kind of creatives you were surrounded by. I remember reading about the famous rock and roll Primrose Hill set in the magazines in Select and in Melody Maker, the likes of Jude Law, Sadie Frost, Kate Moss, as well as your mum, and Danny Goffrey of the legendary Supergrass. Now, did their wild ways that I was reading about back then influence the kind of child you were? Because I think I heard you describe your role in the dynamic of the group as very much like Saffy.
Yeah,
from
I mean,
Ab Fab.
Oh, definitely. And my mum always used to describe me as Saffy because I was the one that would tell them to go to bed because I needed a lift to school in the morning and they were still up at all hours. I was like, can you keep it down? I want to go to sleep. I mean, it was really wild. It was really wild and really raucous and a lot of fun. I think I was like their headmaster almost, or like, I was like their nanny. It's like, excuse me, I've got homework to do. Could you be quiet?
Danny Goffrey, who became your mum's partner in 1996. How quickly did he become a father figure to you?
Straight away.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Danny, bless him. I was 6 when he met my mum, and he had always loved kids so much. As a teenager, to earn extra cash, he set up a babysitting business in the countryside. Like, he really loved kids. So even though he's younger than my mum, he was only 21 when they met. Just really young. He just loved me to bits. And I think he was so besotted, and still is with my mum, that he just was like, this is brilliant. I've always wanted kids. Let's make a family together. And, my mum got pregnant with Alfie quite quickly. I was 7 when he was born. So I think they'd only been together for about a year when they conceived Alf and, moved in with us in Primrose Hill. And that was that. And he was so joyful. Now with my little girl, he's the most amazing granddad to her. We call him Grand Danny. And he's just, obsessed.
It fascinates me, obviously. You didn't know you thought your biological father was one person. It turned out not to be that person.
Yeah, no, I was the one who did the digging to figure it out. Yeah, it was well, either you're not my mum or this guy's not my dad. And is there anyone else my dad could be? And she said, it might be Gavin, who had been my godfather my whole life. So I'd had a wonderful relationship with him always. I had a very strong pull to him as a man, and I adored him so much. And he was really present in my life. So it was this great gift, actually, the day that I found out he was my dad. Yeah. So.
And then that conversation that you eventually had with Gavin Rossdale,
yes.
I loved in Bush, that must have been quite a moment because he didn't know either.
I think they had always thought that it was a possibility, but probably not, and that they were best friends, and they'd always thought, oh, I wish she was yours, or I wish she was mine. And I'm a firm believer in divine timing, and everything happens in the way that it's supposed to, and at the times it's supposed to, and obviously. By that point, my dad was, as now I do call him Dad, which is nice. It's always lovely. Sure. It took some time, and now we have a really wonderful relationship.
Well, let's talk about timing, because you just mentioned 2004, quite a sea change year, and please do tell me if I'm wrong, but obviously this is the year, first of all, where your mum and Danny decide to move away from London, and you move in with your grandparents. So considering how close... clearly you were with both your mum and Danny. What was the pull that kept you in London? Like the reason that you were like, I wanted
to finish my GCSEs, and I had planned on doing my A-levels at South Hampstead, and I was really into school. But then obviously it took a total gear change, because then 2 years later, my mum had my little sister, and I've just missed moments. I wanted to be around as much as possible. And then all this work started coming in, and it was a big choice of, do I stay at school, finish my A-levels, go to university as planned and prepped, or do I go and see the world and take these jobs, earn some decent money, and start my career now?
So just before we begin to talk about some of the incredible achievements in your career, and I guess a couple of struggles, before we go there, I want to ask something that we do ask every guest, because you have had a hugely successful career in your industry. But why do you think you have succeeded where others quite simply haven't?
Wow. That's a big question.
It is.
And also I love the idea of loads of people answering it with like total clarity, because for me, I'm like, I don't bloody know. I would like to think that it was timing. It came down to timing and a moment where I was very lucky in that the industry that I chose to go into, I did have a lot of family friends and connections within it, but I also don't think that they would have booked me for the job if I wasn't right for it. Like, I don't think, I started my career, one of my kind of favourite and continue to work with my favourite clients, I suppose, was Agent Provocateur. And that started, that was actually, aside from the modelling, that was my first and only real proper job. I was a shop girl on Broadwick Street as a teenager, as a Saturday job in the holidays. I would make boxes up in the stockroom. I remember...
Sorry, at Agent Provocateur?
Yeah.
Oh, so you went from building boxes to being on the posters?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was a fantastic time, my goodness, to be in Soho as a teenager and working. Paloma Faith was a shop girl at the time, and Alice Hawkins, who's an incredible fashion photographer. And we had a real laugh. And they were all older than me, and I learned a lot. Oh, my God, I learned so much about being a powerful woman and the power of femininity from those women. But I do remember a turning point for me was we'd all gone away for New Year's with said Primrose Hill set, and there was, I think, about 50 of us. We all rented a castle for New Year's, and while we were away, Serena, who started Agent Provocateur with Joe Corey, Vivienne Westwood's son, said to me, "We'd love for you to do our fragrance campaign, but you're just too young, love." And I was like, oh, I would have never even thought that, I was 15 at the time. And she's like, I never even thought that you would have even wanted me to, but thank you, that's very kind of you to say. And then my mum got a call when we came home, and Serena said, look, we just can't find anyone that looks like Daisy. Can she do it? And so I was their fragrance girl. And they then used those ads for well over 10 years, because I wasn't with a modelling agency at the time. I didn't sign a contract.
Right, so was there a buyout? Or
no, I didn't get any of those. I think I got paid 400 quid in cash.
Right, no residuals. I got you, yeah.
And I'm pretty sure I bought myself a pair of bathing ape trainers with that money, and that was that.
So the Agent Provocateur thing was before the scouting, because you were scouted in Camden Market, again, the sea change year I keep talking about, 2004. I guess we all are familiar with the term someone being scouted, but what was that actually like, where I'm guessing a stranger comes up to you and says, hey, you could be a model?
Yeah, but also I suppose at 15 and probably being a bit cocky was like, oh yeah, I've done some shoots actually. And it's like, but it was also, I could never think of Sarah Leon as a stranger. This kind of angel appeared, and she is still just such an important voice in the entire industry. I mean, I think now she does much more branding with big musicians, but she then went on to be my agent, and she is extraordinary. So warm, wonderful, super creative, brilliant. It was her idea to kind of start a new faces board at a time where there wasn't them. And she really encouraged me to just be myself, which, as a teenager is a confusing concept. Like, who am I? It's an interesting, again, looking back, to think I wasn't a size 0, but I was still bloody tiny, and God, I felt like an elephant, but it was so instrumental to have her really support the fact that she wanted me to celebrate women's bodies, and she loved that. And that was the other deciding factor for me leaving school, was I thought, right, well, if I can make even one woman feel good about having a real woman's body as opposed to this emaciated look that everyone is really championing, then if I can just change one person's part of someone's life, then that would have made my job worth it. Okay, I'm up for that.
The flip side of that, I guess, what was the first time you actually encountered the negative side of comments about your body, especially once you had entered the world of modelling?
I mean, God, there were so many. I can't remember what the first one was, but there was definitely a particular photographer that I worked with a lot that I remember seeing my mum at something and telling my mum that I'd put on weight, and I was like, God, that's so strange. And what gives that man the right to say, oh, you have to watch your daughter, she's looking chubby or whatever. And And then I remember I was cancelled from a show. I went to Milan to do a show, and I went with a load of, one of my best mates still, and a load of other models, and I was asked to go home. But at the time, I was dating a boy in a band, and he had a gig at Proud Galleries, and I was just really happy I made the gig instead. Like, I didn't want to be in Milan. and so you have to find the silver linings in things. I think, it helped me develop a thicker skin, but it's an odd one, because as a model, the fact that then people can comment on your body type, shape, what you're eating, all of that sparked more of that rebellious nature, and then meant that I'd go to New York and go to all the show castings, and then I'd come home and bake a cake and be like, I'm going to eat most of this. And obviously I'm only shooting myself in the foot, because then I'm not fitting into the samples. But I was like, no, I want to stick up for the joy of food and pleasure and living, being alive. I don't want to deny myself in that way. The thing that I didn't realise, which now looking back, is that I was so young, and I was really lucky. I had so many opportunities. But you just, as a teenager, in the middle of all of that, just think that that's like, oh, wow, this is just happening. And you just end up on this crazy ride. I don't think... From 17 to 21, I didn't really have a day off. I just was on a plane on my day off. That was...
And loving it, though. You were...
Loving it.
Right.
Oh, my God. Absolutely loving it. But it was at 21 that I was like, oh, I need a break. I am burning out. I ended up needing a couple of operations. I really worked myself to the bone.
Just from exhaustion.
From exhaustion.
Right.
I did my kidney in.
Oh, gosh.
I was born a little bit wrong. But usually that problem doesn't show up until much later in life, and I think just living on flights and just that compression, and so I ended up needing a new engine basically.
Wow.
Yeah.
You mentioned Stephen Klein. Was that I just wanted to find out, the first job in modelling that you really were like, this is fun. Was this the Vogue Italia shoot?
Yeah.
This is that shoot. Yeah. What was that experience?
That was so much fun. So that was the moment where I got the call from Sarah Leon at Select, and it was like, wow, this is big. It's a one girl story, Italian Vogue, Stephen Klein. This is like what every young girl dreams of that goes into the industry. And, terrified out of my skin, went along, flew to New York, show up at 6 a.m, full hair and makeup. Madonna's makeup artist was doing my makeup. I remember she had lights for everything. She had glasses with lights in them and tweezers with lights in them. And I just like, wow. And I had all this crazy makeup, and the epic Patty Wilson styling me, and get on set, and we're shooting all day, and it was quite a slog. And it gets to 5 p.m.
And you've been shooting since 6 a.m.
Since 6 a.m. And Stephen Klein turns around and he said to me, do you know what? I preferred the way that you looked when you walked in. Can you get into the shower, wash your hair, take off all your makeup? We're going to start again. And we shot the whole story in 2 hours. That was when it got really fun. And because, again, I was 17, but I was getting really self-conscious, because I was like, oh, it's like quiet on set. It felt, am I doing something wrong? What? But those 2 hours were just pure magic, and I just danced around, and we just had such a laugh, and they were really great moments. And I love that story. I was really critical of it, obviously, at the time, but looking back, I'm like, oh, little me, I'm proud of that.
Once your profile grows and you become aware of the kind of brands you want to work with, there is a whole life outside modelling in the public eye, where you can actively choose where you go, where you're seen, who you're with, that will, I guess, dictate the kind of brands that go, oh yes, she represents what we want.
It's interesting, because I never thought about my career like that. I was just friends with who I was friends with, because I liked them and we had a laugh, but I was never that divisive. The choice that then comes in, that success then allows you, is feels astronomical at that point, because up until that point, I remember going along to shoots and being like, what do you mean you're putting blue eyeshadow and no mascara? I'm just going to look terrible. Like, you're just going to destroy my... I'm like, no one wants to see that, even if it's like high fashion. What are you doing? So it was really creatively frustrating at the beginning, because it was like, that's just not going to look good. Or what do you mean you're putting me in this like balloon outfit? I have boobs, like it's not going to work. And so gaining a bit more creative control as my career went on was definitely a relief. But what has been lovely throughout my career is that I've been able to take the reins a bit more creatively along the road, which is really fun. Like, getting involved in styling and creative direction is cool.
I think one of the people, and correct me if I'm wrong, that within this industry, who's obviously the late, great Vivienne Westwood, you formed a great friendship with her. What was it like when you first met her? Did you immediately hit it off? Was it just there?
So I have to just start this by saying the reason why I ended up falling in love with clothes was because of her and her spirit, but her designs. And, as I said, my mum used to traipse me around here, there and everywhere, because my mum is obsessed with clothes. That was always a bit of a drag. But when I discovered Vivienne Westwood clothes in her wardrobe, that was when I thought, this is like a playground. And so a big dream of mine was to walk for a Westwood show, and for her first London show, when she brought Anglomania back to London, was the first time that I met her. And she wasn't at my fitting, but I'd done a lookbook of hers years before, but I hadn't met her. And at this show, I was all dressed and glam done. And I remember thinking, I look a bit ordinary, a bit normal for a Westwood show. But I just thought it, I didn't say it out loud. And then Viv walks in and took one look at me and just went, come here, love, and put her hands in a makeup palette and then just dragged it down my face. I was like, this is what I was waiting for. Brilliant, thank you. Couldn't agree more. And that was the start of... And then I walked in her shows many, many times. And yeah, that was... Well, it was just fashion at its core, at its greatest, irreverent, with so much purpose and wild. It was brilliant.
I had a wonderful Vivienne Westwood coat that I'd had for about 10 years that my dog tore up only 2 weeks ago.
Oh, no. And is it... irreplaceable? Can you fix it?
Can't be fixed. Irreplaceable. And obviously the dog's been put down now. But no, that's obviously not true. But yeah, a wonderful designer. I found a quote that she said of you in 2019. Daisy's a bombshell. She looks super sexy all the time. And she's one of those lucky girls who never needs to do anything but be herself.
Wow.
Yeah.
She said that about me? I didn't even know that. God bless you for finding that for me.
It's an absolute pleasure. This is a well-researched show.
Yeah, clearly.
But outside of fashion, I guess you maybe made a connection because of your shared commitment to environmental causes. That's something that...
Yeah, I was very lucky to spend some time with her when I would go along to, I think it was the G8 summit protest. We had a wild time. Yeah, she was just such a great pioneer for making sure that people were aware of what's going on rather than just sticking our heads in the sand, right? And using our position to actually try and make some positive change.
Enjoying this Laurent-Perrier heritage, I keep coming back to the stories behind their wines. Earlier, we talked about Bernard de Nonancourt's dedication to innovation, and nothing says it better than the Alexandra Rosé, which became a symbol of both celebration and craftsmanship. But Bernard's vision pushed Laurent-Perrier to elevate rosé champagne to a whole new level, because this was a prestige cuvée of exceptional rarity that came from a rigorous selection of the best plots and an exceptional marriage between the Grand Cru grapes of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. So here's to the special memories in all our lives and to the responsible enjoyment of a very special champagne. Cheers. We've talked about some of the high points of your modelling career. I mean, are there shoots that you have regretted saying yes to? I mean, I know doing my research, you described the Playboy shoot you did as something you wish you hadn't.
Really? Did I say that?
Yes.
Oh, see, now I'm a bit older. I'm like, no, I'm really happy that I did. I'd always wanted to do Playboy.
Yeah.
And that was always on my bucket list of things to do. And I didn't, it wasn't supposed to be a cover at the time. It was supposed to be, I was actually booked to shoot French Playboy. And the cover of that. And then American Playboy asked if they could use 8 pages of the images. They didn't tell me, but then it just came out and I was the cover. And I mean, it was pretty cool. I'm pleased that when I'm, you know, if I live till the ripe old age of 90, that I can look back and go, oh, look what I did once. I mean, you know. Yeah, I think the thing that maybe I was talking about was I didn't appreciate the retouching that happened. They shaved off my hips in one of the pictures, and it was... It's like, what's the point in booking me if you don't want like a feminine body? It's Playboy. Yeah. I'm allowed to have hips.
Of course.
I've got them.
Right.
So maybe that was what I was referring to at that point in time. But I'm pleased. I think now my wonderful fiancé is pretty positive that he saw that Playboy when he was a teenager and was like, I'd quite like to marry a Playboy bunny, and it turns out that he is marrying me, so it was quite funny.
Now, well, I'm pleased that shoot wasn't as bad as the quotes around it suggested at the time, or that you can now look back on it and be quite happy with it, because there is a dark side to the modelling world, that there is this huge expectation put on girls to look a certain way, and even pressure from those who are kind of meant to be looking after them, agency pressure. Did you experience and see any of that?
No, God, of course. I think that I was just always far too rebellious for anyone to contain me. I was never measured because I was always like, absolutely not. You know, it's like, if you don't want me to be part of this, I'm good, but I don't need you to kind of shame me with a tape measure. I'm good. But of course there's a darker side to it, and there were times as a teenager more than anything that I felt really pressured. Eventually, as I do always like to find the silver linings, I ended up realising that, exercise is quite good for my mental health. Maybe that's quite a nice way of, rather than taking food away, why don't I just get fit? And that became, you know, a real medicine for me. So I think you have to have a really strong backbone to get through the darker sides of it, and I was very lucky that I have a really strong support system as well. My mum was someone I could always turn to when it felt like too much. The pressures of, I think, and more than ever, not just on models, like, you know, just as human beings with social media, it's really hardcore. You're faced constantly with these ideas of perfection that are total myths.
I think it was around the late noughties when you became regarded as, in inverted commas, an it girl. You were obviously being invited to a lot of red carpet events, fashion shows, and like, how did you feel about the It Girl title, that as a moniker?
I remember thinking, if it is in the regards of the wonderful Brigitte Bardot and Jane Birkin, I'll take it. But if it means some sort of smut, then I'm not so interested. Again, my mum, being classic Pearl, was, you know, there to make sure that I stayed grounded and I did not get too high in the sky. No egos allowed through the front door in our house. So that was very important. But the It Girl thing was like, is that just because I do lots of things and I haven't been able to figure out what my exact path is? Or is that because I'm successful at doing them? And, you know, you end up asking, obviously I'm my worst inner critic. And so then a lot of the time it was like, oh goodness, is that okay? But I did definitely enjoy my life. You know, I made sure that I had a lot of fun going to all the things that I went to and traveling the world and working my arse off. But I think my main concern was that I didn't want people to think that because I had this like title of It Girl that I didn't work my arse off, because I really did. And everything that I had, I really fought for. When
you say your own worst critic, you are analysing what you're doing constantly. You're considering it all and I guess on some level questioning it?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think it's also always wondering, you know, have I made the right choice? Am I doing the right thing? Am I really making women feel good about themselves rather, or is this, I don't want this to be a vanity project. Is this, and yes, I'm also paying my bills, I want to make my parents proud. I want to make myself proud. I want to make my future family proud. And then obviously I also got my clothes off a lot, so I also that. On the other side, I'm a world of contradictions.
Which is fine, because I think you've said, despite attending all these events, that wasn't your idea of fun. That's not what. Well, I'm sure there was fun to be had at them. Given the choice, that's not what you'd have been doing were it not for the work that you were doing.
I was doing.
Exactly.
My idea of a good time is making a big roast on a Sunday and having a load of people over and sharing a bottle of wine and listening to great music, having a laugh together, connection in that way.
Bleached roasts have come up. It's one of my favourite questions. How do you do your roast potatoes?
Beef dripping.
Beef dripping?
Beef dripping. So parboil,
Mm-hmm.
hot beef dripping.
Nice.
In there with a bit of gluten-free flour and salt, and then a bulb of garlic.
In the oil, sitting amongst
the potatoes. So then you get those like lovely, comfy...
The oil, so the oil has to, I'm really
It has to be hot.
Super hot.
Super
though.
hot,
So the oil goes in, so they immediately...
The oil goes in as I'm parboiling the potato, so it gets that hot.
Yeah.
So like 15 minutes.
I'm with you. I'm going to stick a bulb of garlic in mine. Never tried it.
Do you do yours in beef dripping?
I don't. I'm veggie.
Veggie, sorry.
Yeah. No, it's fine. You can
for you,
you can talk about beef dripping. I just can't eat it.
For you, I would do it in hot oil.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Now, I want to ask you something we ask all our guests, because you have created a unique and personal space in the modelling world. You've stood out from the crowd with all the experience and knowledge that you have now. What do you think it takes to be original?
I think it comes back to being true to yourself. You can sit and compare yourself to the rest of the world for as long as you like, but there will never be anyone that is you. And that's what makes you original, right? And your own experience, your own tapestry, what you bring to the table. So if you want to make it in the creative industry, you've just got to think, what do I like and what do I want? And how does that make me feel? Or how do I want to make them feel? And you bring your own personal take onto how you want to express yourself, because there's no one else but you.
Is it easier now where you are in your career? And I guess how you view your career, because obviously you're still modelling now, but do you view it as an intense career, or is it much more like I can cherry pick the roles I have?
Now?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's very different because I am a full-time mum.
Right.
At the moment, my little Ivy doesn't go to nursery yet, and that was a choice that I made. I wanted to wait until she was 2.5 and give her all of the time that I could. But I also, after making that decision, realised the way for me to be the best mum was to also keep part of my identity away from her, and it's also really important for her to have a little bit of independence. I'm not leaving her on her own, but as in not just on me. I want her to feel secure with other people that she loves and build attachment with other human beings. I mean, particularly her dad, who is taking care of her at the moment. So I now have this wonderful reason to only pick things that I really enjoy doing, working with brands that I really believe in, or for causes that I really believe in, and teams that I adore, and it's really shifted the way that I work and has made work so much more joyful.
I've interviewed actors, obviously, who've created bodies of work who they're reluctant to show their kids until a certain age. It's interesting you feel the same about some of your shoots. There's going to be,
of course.
I mean, like taking Playboy out of the equation, but even some of the others, you're sort of like, I'm not sure I want my 2-year-old Ivy to see me in this light. I wanted to see me as mum. What's the thinking there?
No, I think I don't mind the way she will see me warts and all. She always does, so she can see all of it. I think also when she gets to a certain age, I will definitely show her Playboy, Agent Provocateur, all of that, because it's what made me and what she is part of. I'm part of her. So, but I think the point of picking and choosing now is it's just because I'm really lucky that I have the choice to pick and choose in my career. And my thinking behind it is I love being present with my little girl, so it has to mean something to me to take me away from her.
And is she currently dressed in white frilly dresses and Dr. Martens boots?
She has a couple of white frilly dresses, and she does have a couple of pairs of Doc Martens, but mainly she's in tracksuits, which is, my mum's worst nightmare. But I keep coming back to, she's comfy, let her be. She's really feral. She just wants to be outside rolling around in mud, so it's way easier to clean a tracksuit.
So I'm sure it is. We've talked about body positivity and the unfair expectations that existed in the past, but in your career and seeing on the jobs that you do cherry pick now, has there actually been a positive, palpable change in the modelling industry, or is it still a little bit smoke and mirrors to hide what really goes on?
There has been a huge shift. My goodness, it felt like it was never going to change back in 2004, 5, 6, when I was really starting out and being really penalised for my shape. And so it feels worlds apart from that, of course. And I think the fact that people are really speaking out on social media, there's nowhere to hide in the way that you could 19, 20 years ago. Wow.
we decided
I've been doing this. We've been,
we said we weren't going to talk about how long it's been since we've seen each other, because that tells us how old we are. Yes.
And I'm okay. I'm proud that I'm 36 now. I think it's good. Yeah. Although someone the other day said, "Wow, you look good for 36," and I thought, I didn't know that was an age that I had to look good.
Try 46, and then
you're doing good.
Thanks very much. Yeah.
But the industry, I'm sure there are smoky mirrors. Of course there are, but it is worlds apart.
You mentioned, and I want to mention it, obviously, because it's one of the biggest shows on TV, Strictly Come Dancing, which you appeared on. To quote Vivienne Westwood again, I don't know whether you've heard this one, Daisy has quite simply the best walk, confident and proud. Yet going on Strictly, you were worried about the opposite.
I am really clumsy.
Right.
I'm really clumsy.
Off the catwalk, though. Because,
off the catwalk. Right. I have once in a show, I did a little trip, but I've never fallen down.
Okay.
Just a moment. But the funny thing was, I remember people tried to teach me how to do a catwalk, and I was like, no, I just want to strut. This
seems to be the story of your. It's like, yeah, okay, you want me to do that. I'm probably going to do it like this.
Probably going to do it my way, which I just didn't realise how rebellious I was.
But this is very much what we're talking about here. This is how you have created this original space in this industry.
Well, I didn't realise that until sitting down with you, so thank you so much.
It's an absolute pleasure. Now, as we do sit here in the Savoy in 2025 and you look back across your career at this point, how do you feel? Do you feel satisfied creatively, or are there still things on your bucket list that you really want to achieve?
Oh yeah, there's still so much on my bucket list. Of course there is. When I started out, I never thought in a million years that in my 30s I'd even be allowed to do a photo shoot. But, ageism is seeming to also dissipate massively, which is fantastic. And I still really enjoy doing what I do, but definitely the degree's on the bucket list, but that's separate, I suppose.
Still chemistry?
Maybe something to do with like neuroscience.
Oh my God, my friend's a neuroscientist. So he was approached by the US military to see if he could investigate how to put an insect-like brain in a drone so it could move like a fly. Yeah, wow. Neuroscience is crazy.
Crazy. Yeah, I don't know if I'm quite bright enough for that, but maybe.
We're nearing the end of our time together, but I do have 3 quick-fire-ish questions for you to finish off our chat today. So we have made our way through but a tiny portion of your achievements here. But what is it that you are most proud of in your career?
My career? Really, I was just very, very grateful that as a model I was able to push the idea. Body positivity wasn't a term that was used back when I started modelling, and so even if I had a small part of that movement, that makes me over the moon for sure.
So tell me the most valuable skill you've ever learnt in your career, the one that changed your way of doing things.
Going through the modelling industry, you have to learn to just get on with it and find the best possible outcome in every situation. Well, at least that was how I felt. You know, like any job, there's tough sides to it, and I think modelling could be very lonely and quite alienating and very, very critical. And so I had to just figure a bright side through it, and I think that skill set's definitely carried me through.
So it's our final question, and I guess the answer to this question, you're both in the perfect place to answer, and I guess it's different to what you might have said, you know, when you started your career. But is there one piece of advice you'd give someone else wanting to follow in your footsteps?
In my footsteps. I would say, I would say get a really good therapist.
It's a good fair answer. Do you still do therapy?
I do still do therapy.
Yeah.
I do, and now much less so than I did before. Just like lovely check-ins, but oh my goodness, that emotional education. Could not put a price on it.
Well, that is us together. So for one last time, I have very much enjoyed seeing you again. And to you, Daisy Lowe,
cheers, and to
original.
you. It's an absolute honour.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Not 15 years ago. It hasn't been 50 years. Like 7 or something.
I'd say 4.
And that is it. Thank you to our producer Matt Hill at Rethink Audio, to our sponsor Laurent-Perrier, and of course to Daisy Lowe for coming in today. Join me again next week when we'll be opening the Savoy's Little Black Book to welcome another celebrated guest and ask them what it takes to be a true original. Until then, follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Bye-bye for now.